Thanks, Anna. Professor Riley C. Nelson, professor of biology, came to BYU in 1999 after experience as a senior lecturer at the University of Texas. His research interests include insect systematics, freshwater ecology, and the popularization of science. His recent publications include Authentic and Simulated Professional Development, Teachers Reflect What is Modeled, in the School Science and Mathematics Journal. Capnia shasta, a new species in the California group from northwestern California, in the Alicia International Journal of Stonefly Research. Nelson previously worked as a biomonitoring consultant and as well as a factory laboratory advisor at the Nature Conservancy of Texas and as a field research associate for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. He received his bachelor and master's degree in biology from Utah State University, where he worked as a research associate, a PhD in zoology from BYU, and he was the Tilton Postdoctoral Fellow in Entomology at the California Academy of Science. His title today, as I mentioned before, is Mongolia, Saving the World One Step at a Time, One Stream at a Time. As you'll notice, Professor Nelson is quite an accomplished photographer, and I'm sure that will add as he tells us about some important insights and perspectives in his work in Mongolia. So please join me in welcoming Professor Nelson.
I'm going to try and be really good and stand by this podium. It doesn't fit me, okay? I'm a little bit of a wanderer, okay? These pictures we've been looking at so far, that's just my screensaver. I took almost all of these pictures, and I have seen the world in my own way, and I have my own interpretations of it. I'll give some of those interpretations, but more than that, I want you to see what things mean to you.
Migrating birds, Buyangol, Mongolia, 21 July 2008. Mongolia Aquatic Insect Survey signing off. Bye-bye.
I went to Mongolia to study stoneflies. I learned so much more as I go to places around the world. I've gone to Mongolia 5 different times now for a month each time. And it's hard to go, and it's hard to come back, but it's really quite hard to stay there sometimes. I have a goal for my life that I want to make the world a better place. I think we all should figure out how we do that. Some people will do it politically, others will do it chemically, whatever different ways are possible to make the world a better place. I think we need to explore those. So I'd like to show you a few things that we've been doing in Mongolia as part of our efforts to take care of the streams and help the people of Mongolia take good care of their own country. As I've moved around the world, one of the things that I've noticed is that sometimes we as North Americans or Europeans or whatever country we might come from, we go in as if we are going to save that country from itself. I have none of that opinion. I am totally humbled when I go to Mongolia to see what they have been able to do for their long history. They've had some challenges, and we have gone through some challenges that we have learned from, and so I'm trying to teach them a few things, but they need to help do with their country what they think is the right thing. Migrating Birds. This is a love song that is sung regularly around our campfires as we're camping out on the steppe of Mongolia. Here's a couple of tundra swans flying across the Dakhan Basin up on the Russian border. And those same tundra swans end up in North America as well. And those swans will be moving in through Utah any day now. And it takes me back to my youth as I saw these tundra swans were in northern Mongolia up on the flats, but it reminded me of my own youth. I loved the idea of these different showo. The second word up there is showo birds. We had a transliteration of this song made so that we could, since most of us don't read Cyrillic very well, and we could sing this together. And I wrote my own little English translation of it, but it's not nearly as good as something that I can't understand. So, just in case I don't get finished with everything I'd like to say today, the topic for the day is love, saving, and sharing. We're going to look at that from a perspective of people, place, living things. I'm a biologist, I'm a scientist, I love to study living things, and I have a few tidbits and things up here. Here's a camel skull, some stoneflies, and different pieces of equipment that the Mongolians would use regularly. I'm going to try and mingle this all together, but you're going to take your own meaning from this. In the end, I would hope that you would have an idea of stewardship, and whatever you're in charge of, whatever your part of the world is your favorite spot, whether it's your own heart or bigger, take care of that spot. I am completely thankful for my chance to live in Mongolia. It has taught me things about myself that I didn't know, and I don't know how I could have learned any other way. I've learned some lessons like this from time that I spent long times in the South Pacific among Polynesian people, but I love to sit with Mongolians around a fire and sit with a pocket knife and a bone from a sheep and just cut that meat off and just eat and talk and sing. They are so good at singing. I appreciate that. Bakhla. These are the people, some of them, not all of them. This isn't a third of them. These are some pictures I put in of people associated with this project. Many of them Mongolians. This work is funded largely by the National Science Foundation as we learn how we can use the stoneflies in Mongolia to judge what the quality of the streams are, the qualities of the streams are. Well, also got good help from Roger and the Roger and Victoria Sant Endowment for a Sustainable Environment. They've supported this well as numerous mentorships here from different donors here at Brigham Young University. I have a deep gratitude in my heart for this help. It's a good and big and deep responsibility to use these kinds of monies well. Mongolia is an example of international cooperation. Here's a man that founded international cooperation. And he did a very good job. He would march into a town with a flag. It could either be white or it could be black. And how you accepted those flags determined where you were sitting at the end of the day, or if you were sitting. This emblem is on benches all over Mongolia. Genghis Khan, man of the millennium. Think of who you would replace Genghis Khan with as the man of the millennium, and it will always be second rate, because he did such a magnificent job in uniting for a time Central Asia, the largest empire perhaps that the world has ever seen. And so as a result, they immortalized Genghis Khan on their favorite vodka. I could speak a little bit about politics and religion, communism and capitalism, because it's a nice things and nice contrast for Mongolia. I'm not familiar with all of the ins and outs of that. I just know that back about less than 20 years, the Soviets left Mongolia and communism changed over to capitalism, in essence, and there were great challenges for the people. One of the things that the Soviets did when they left is they took all of the management and of how to take care of a modern pluralistic society. They took those ideas with them, and not enough Mongolians were trained to take care of their own resources. As a result, when capitalists moved in, and I believe in capitalism, they sometimes worked with one goal in mind, and that was to get mined. And that was to get money out of Mongolia however they could get it out. Mongolia is a rich country. It's got lots of gold, lots of coal, lots of copper, and it's perched in an interesting place between two superpowers, if you will. China, superpower for several different reasons, namely humanity, and Russia, from a history and a stick-to-itiveness to get things done. What we hope to do when we got to Mongolia was to retrain the Mongolians a bit on how to judge when their streams are in good condition. And bugs tell us those stories. I study stoneflies. Other people with me study crane flies or mayflies or flies of this, that, or the other type. And we use the community of those insects that are living in a stream to judge what the current quality of that stream is and what might be the potential for that body of water. This is the Dayan Dirkhin Monastery, the ruins of it. This monastery up in Hoskol Amak, up by a great big lake called Lake Hoskol. This was the largest Buddhist monastery in Mongolia. And it was raised along with all of the lam, all of the priests, when Stalin wanted to make Mongolia fit a Russian model. During that purge, the numbers vary, but some estimates are that 100,000 lam were killed, Buddhist priests. That was in a country that had 700,000 people at the time. And upwards, and this may be a high number, 7,000 Buddhist temples were razed to the ground. This particular stupa up in the middle of nowhere, but everywhere is the middle of nowhere in Mongolia, and that's why it's attractive to me. This particular stupa had one post remaining from the original temple series that was there. It looked like it was just a natural spot, except for this one little idea. So Buddhism was never eliminated entirely from Mongolia, but it was sought. But during those 70 years, the religiosity, I would say, of the people declined, and they didn't claim any particular religion as their own. So Stalin was in part successful in what he was trying to do. But now there's a resurgence in religion, and it's going out in many directions, from Christianity and Mormonism to Buddhism to a wide variety of other folks and thoughts. For our project, this goes back to a man named Clyde Goulden. Clyde's alive. He's a good friend. He lives in Philadelphia part of the year and part of the year in Ulaanbaatar. And his wife comes from the Hinti Mountains east of Ulaanbaatar. He started studying how to measure global climate change back in the 1990s. Before it made the big news, he started checking to see where the permafrost levels were then around Lake Hovsgol, and has followed up with that research to this day. He recruited my very good friend John Gelhaus to explore how the insects might be better known in Mongolia and how that could inform the Mongolians what their resources were and how to protect the waters. Mongolians love their water. Mongolians love water, Mongolians love wood, and Mongolians love mutton. Sheep. And John Gelhaus formed a team to help learn more of these ideas, and I became part of that team in about 2003. Field expeditions take place, and they last about a month each year. That's the time when we can get into the streams, when there's no significant amounts of ice in the streams, and the insects are emerging so that we can find them. There are lots of good bugs in Mongolia, and I try and catch them and put them in little bottles and send them to different places around the world to experts who can deal with them. There's lots of yogurt in Mongolia. We try and visit as many places as we can to get a sense of how things are going, and we've concentrated mostly in the northern part of the country. Suvda here got degrees in the United States and is now back managing a biomonitoring team in Mongolia to help take care of the Mongolian resources. We have a whole list of 10 different agencies, both governmental agencies of Mongolia and nonprofit agencies run by Mongolians that help take care of seeing where the different bugs live in the country and how different citizens groups can make sure that as miners, mining companies, and cashmere companies. Anybody wearing cashmere today? I happen not to have any. I do have a wool coat on, so there's some redeeming value. Cashmere is a wonderful wool that is grown to perfection in Mongolia. And it commands a good amount of money for the herdsmen as they work with their herds. And what we want to make sure is that the waters of Mongolia stay in as good a condition so that as much wool, cashmere, yak, yogurt, and people can exist there in a state of good happiness, okay? That's the goal, okay? Last winter was a very hard winter for Mongolians. They had a climatic event called a tsud. Tsud hit, and there's estimates that they lost 2.5 million animals. These are people that rely on these animals for almost their complete livelihood in many cases. They lost at least 2.5 million. Some estimates, just from last year, are that 8 million animals died as a result of a hard winter kill. That's in a country with roughly 2 million people. So one of the things that I do in my small part, along with my graduate students, especially Sarah Judson had a lot to do with that. She's gone on to other jobs, biomonitoring for streams in the United States. But we wanted to create guides that could help Mongolians identify their own insects. And we were gratified this summer as we came into a little town, which was where? The middle of nowhere, out in Ufs Amak. And we found our little tiny pieces of paper and people with a sock in a stream catching the bugs and identifying them. I was gratified that something that I was doing was making a bit of a difference. So I love stoneflies. I love people, I think you see that, but I love stoneflies. They come in a variety of forms. Stoneflies are good for this business because they're sensitive to pollution and changes in the environment. Some people would say they're one of the best indicators. There are other colleagues that I work with that study other very good groups as well. The caddisflies, Trichoptera, Tipulidae are the crane flies, and Chironomidae, the most dominant aquatic insect on Earth. They are the midges. And Ephemeroptera are mayflies. We take a lot of time to collect these insects and distribute them to friends and colleagues around the world so that we could have a better sense of what lives in Mongolia. Just yesterday, I got a reprint in the mail, a PDF of a report on a kind of fly called dance flies, written by Professor Plant at the University of Wales. It showed on his maps, on page after page, that there was a big gaping hole between coastal Japanese, close to Japan, Asia, and across Kazakhstan until you hit about the Ural Mountains. There was a big gap in knowledge of where different kinds of insects live. We're trying to fill that gap. So we do that by running out with nets and aspirators, yellow pans, light traps, all kinds of ways to do this. We do what we call rapid bioassessment. Many of these streams have never been looked at as far as what kinds of animals are in them. One of the animals that lives in these streams that we don't study is a trout. It's the world's largest trout, or a salmonid at least. It grows to a length of 2 meters. This is a trout, 2 meters long. That's this tall, okay? And it grows to a weight of 100 kilos, 220 pounds. I, as of this morning, I'm 197 pounds. I am a trout. They've figured out how to do catch and release for these fish now, and it's generating quite an income for the Mongolians to catch these trout several times instead of having someone catch them once. So we create these identification guides. Here's an example of some of the work we do. This is from Sarah Judson's thesis. Here is a page for this one kind of stonefly. If we look on the left-hand side, we see an overall view, views of the tail ends of the males and females, and a view of the head of the immature stage that you would find in the stream. On the bottom is an approximation. The black dots represent where that species has exactly been caught, and the brighter the color away from blue is where it is estimated based on ecological extrapolation where that species probably occurs. We've done this for all the 53 stoneflies in Mongolia. One of the breakthrough things that she has done is create these sheets like this that show on the top row the nymphs of the species that are most closely related to each other, or most likely to be confused amongst themselves. So it's like a picture book for identification. This will work well when put in the hands of a nomad. They will take a few pieces of paper and stuff it into their dell and carry it out on the steppe. I have here in my pocket a small telescope. This is my own, but almost every good Mongolian out with his herds will have a portable telescope with him so they can see if Chinggis is coming on the horizon. Okay? They have those things available. This is the magnificent pictorial work that Sarah did to create these, to summarize what our knowledge is of these stoneflies in Mongolia. We have studied the northern half of the country more than the southern half. Next year, we hope to be down in the Gobi, okay? In the Gobi, the western Gobi. So these are the examples of what happens. Here's the geography of Mongolia, and it's the best maps that you can find for Mongolia. Well, there are lots of good maps, but this one happens to be a CIA map. And are there any Mongolians in the audience? Anybody that's been to Mongolia? Okay? Can you see some of the places where you were? Ulaanbaatar, certainly. But look at Hoft and Murren and Khatkal. These are wonderful places. It brings back good memories. When I was a young child, If you notice, this map is the same as this one. I get so excited when I come into this room because I see these maps. I love this map. Back in 1961, Mike and Willie Vogt, some family friends from Fresno, I come from Brigham City, Utah, gave our family a subscription to National Geographic. It changed my life, okay? And now I still get National Geographic and want to go places around the world. So I grew up with a center of the world, and you'll see these red things up here. Here's Brigham City, the center of the universe, okay? And the center of any known intelligence. The further you get from Brigham City, the intelligence quotient goes down, okay? I'm being sarcastic. Exactly oppositely sarcastic, perhaps. I love Brigham City and would go back in a minute. I was sent to the South Pacific, where I learned wonderful things in the islands of Tahiti, and that was a great part of my life. And I've since spent research time there. I spent time in projects in the Amazon basin and the rivers fringing the Amazon, and a little bit in the Australian area. But Maupiti in the South Pacific, and now Mongolia up here, have captured my heart. And I'm talking today especially about this. I'd like to thank National Geographic, and more directly, Mike and Willie Vogt. She had a plastic arm. That was important to me as a 4-year-old. So I went to the middle of nowhere in the South Pacific, and my last major research site before going to Mongolia was there in the South Pacific. I love the South Pacific and would like to be there today. Whenever I see a little bit of snow on the ground, it makes me think of coconut trees. But now I wanted to go somewhere else. And luckily my friend John Gelhaus was around, and he had this project going in Mongolia. Here centered, we see this big lake here in Russia, Lake Baikal, the deepest lake in the world. It holds about 1/5 of the liquid fresh water on Earth in one lake. It's a very deep lake. The water that fills Baikal comes out of Mongolia, the Salank River, okay? And we were to study the Salank River to make sure that the Salank would be giving good water to Lake Baikal. Incredible bugs in Lake Baikal and in Hovskal, and incredible people along the way if you get up to Sukpatar and up to Dahad and other places. Wonderful areas. We, this past year, we're out here on this little blue dot, big blue dot. That's Ufsnur, Ufs Lake, Grass Lake. It's, when you look across Ufsnur, it's, you don't see the other side, okay? It's a horizon, every bit as much of a horizon as what I could see from Maupiti. And yet, it's in the middle of nowhere. Officially, the middle of nowhere is right up here in Russia, a place called Tuva. It's sometimes it's a nation, sometimes it's a part of Russia or something. But Tuva has a town. I don't know how to pronounce the name of the town, but I'll try. How about Kizil? Kizil. These are where the throat singers especially come from, and from Ufs and other places in Mongolia. Wonderful experiences. There's an obelisk in Kizil that marks that as the center of Asia. That's as far as you can get. I need to go that far to get to the middle of nowhere on land. That's the place on land you can get farthest from the ocean in all directions. I've been pretty darn close. Here is where we have been. Kizil is right up here. These are our sampling localities. Remember, this costs for about a month a year, we get about 50 sites visited with all of the logistics that's involved to get to these. I have seen the worst roads that I have ever seen in Mongolia. I have traveled those roads. Sometimes we travel from here to Heber in a day. That's a good day. Some days we travel further. We may get all the way to Park City, okay? But we're not looking for Park City. We're looking for Jagalant. There's so many Jagalant in Mongolia. What does Jagalant mean? Happiness, something good. And there's a lot of Bayanzurk, rich heart, and a lot of Tsaganur, lots of wonderful places I've been. These are the people that helped get us to those places. I have traveled with these people. I love them, okay? They each have different things that I remember about them, and I remember stories. Just a quick glance takes me back to what I have learned from them, and hopefully from amongst ourselves we learn something. These people come from at least these countries. I'm forgetting. We have a big team associated with us. We go out in a group of about 30, 25 to 29 people in an expedition each year, moving around in 5 vehicles. A Soviet-era truck that has wheels about this tall so that we don't get stuck. If we get stuck in that, we're in big trouble. And it happens regularly enough. And then 5 Jeeps and 4-wheel drive vans to get us across. In the United States, I could remember these states represented. So lots of people have participated in this effort. Here are my friends Lydia Siltsova from Russia and Ignatsevich. He's from Slovenia. Russia, Slovenia, and Sana Engtaiwan from Mongolia. These are my friends. She hasn't got to go to Mongolia. She lives in St. Petersburg, by whatever name you call that city. I love as we go across and we camp for the night. We'll start getting set up and we're changing camp, moving our tents every night. We aren't there for more than 5 minutes, and we were in the middle of nowhere with nothing visible, but somebody somewhere had their telescope and knew what we were doing, and they come galloping up on their horses and go right into camp and start talking to the Mongolians. I don't know what they're saying all the time, but they get in animated discussions, and then a lot of sharing takes place. Usually the people in the camp immediately give these people some food of some sort, and then within about an hour, big piles of yogurt and cheese and milk appears, and we're taken care of in some small way. As we empty our jam jars or our peanut butter jars, we don't burn them or throw them away. We put the lid on, set them carefully by where our fire stove was, and then not long a nomad will come along, whether a Mongol or a Kazakh will come and get those bottles and take it off to fill with yogurt for the next round of events. It's a wonderful way to recycle. This woman shared with me a little tiny piece of wool. She wouldn't give me very much of it. She had plenty. But she said, I want to make something out of this. But I have that little piece of wool in my office to remember that I need to make something out of what this woman gave me. These people drying out some yogurt on top of their tent. These people needed some aspirin. They helped with their horses pull our big truck out. He wanted some bread. He was running a marathon. And then we talk about the steppes of Mongolia. Lovely habitats. Could be tall grass, rich prairies such as this, or short grass prairies. Magnificent array of wide open spaces. The Mongolians worship, in essence, that color blue, tsenker over there. That blue is very important to Mongolians. They look at their country as the country of the sky. Here a little further west, a little bit drier, horses everywhere. This is the steppe. Here is our camp. We're playing musical chairs. This is the national holiday around the 11th or 12th of July. This is Nadam, Nadam here. And Nadam means something like games day, okay? But typically when you say Nadam, you think of the 3 manly arts. The 3 manly arts in Mongolia are wrestling, archery, and horseback riding, okay? We played musical chairs instead because we didn't have any horses or bows. We did wrestle. 5 years I went to Mongolia, and this year I decided I would wrestle. I knew that I couldn't win. I'm 6'4" tall. The Mongolians were probably averaging about 5'6" or 5'8". Here is Dawa. Dawa was our champion from the previous 2 years. I drew him in the first round. My coach from Lithuania. Tulga is his coach. No, that's the eagle dance. I don't do it very well. You'll see I don't do a lot of things well. Look at that smile. How could he possibly hurt you? Manly arts. Whoever hits the ground other than the soles of their feet first loses. Oh, watch that pocket. That pocket's too inviting. You gave him that pocket. If I wouldn't have given him that pocket, I might still be standing today. I lost. He comes from Ufs Amak. The champion for all of the country this year is from Ufs Amak, from the town of Olangom. There's his coach, Tulga. He's from UB, Ulaanbaatar. They don't quite know what to do with me. I don't know what to do with me. He says, go over there. Okay. Riley Nelson retires. And then my hat from Maupiti. So I have a little bit of my pride. Nalam, wonderful thing. They say sometimes that it's to remember making sure that one kind of Russian got eliminated and the other one didn't, is one of the political interpretations of Nalam. More, it's just to have a good thing to have some horhuk. Okay, so let's go to another side of the universe. Here we see a representation of the universe. After I got back from Mongolia, I wanted to study the universe. Okay? The reason I wanted to study the universe is this is the backside of my kneecap. By cutting holes into my knee and putting a camera in, they could see that I had a tear in the cartilage on the backside of my kneecap. It isn't really Jupiter spinning out as a planet. This is a different view of me. I got that tear wrestling in Mongolia. I love streams. Look carefully at this picture. Oyuna is in this stream, in this picture. Oyuka is jumping across that waterfall up at the top. Can we as humans have this kind of a presence on the streams as we live in the world today, where we are just a passing moment? What a wonderful spot, the streams of Mongolia. I have thousands of pictures of Mongolian streams. I only can share a few of them with you. That was all I get, is 2. Back in 2008, so about 2 years ago, we went to Hoton Nur. This is right on the Chinese border. This is a lake about 50 times the size of Bear Lake. Okay? Wouldn't show up on the map. Okay? It's too big.
Here I am on the banks of Hoton Nur, Hoton Lake, in extreme western Mongolia.
That's
The
China.
wind is howling, maybe 45, 50 miles an hour. You can hardly stand up. And stoneflies are emerging down on the beach. See if I can find some. There's one.
My job is to catch stoneflies. I missed that one. What an interesting night. What a beautiful night. We got there in this hurricane force wind, and some of our people were trying to set up their tents. They got blown a kilometer away. We had to go chase them down. And then I was not worrying about my tent. I was worried about stoneflies. I survived. In fact, I thrived. I love stoneflies. Sarah and I presented about these in New Mexico this year. There's Sarah. What a hard worker. Stoneflies. Aren't they voluptuous? Flies are voluptuous. Eggs. Perlidae. Teniopterigidae with eggs. Perlidae again, Agnatina. Arsenopteryx. They all have names. Haploperla. I study the bugs. People mostly don't care about the bugs. I'm okay with that, but those insects can tell us about the quality of the waters so that herds such as these can continue to exist. Here is a typical herd from Mongolia. About 600 animals. They're moving about 75 miles. They're driving the herd, and the herd is mixed of camels, sheep, goats, mixture of goats and sheep, Yaks and cattle. What else? Horses. They love horses, okay? They move that, and they love their animals, whether dead or alive, okay? Here is a camel all fitted with a saddle, and it's carrying a lame goat on it. The goat got a free ride for 75 miles, okay? But change, it is a-coming, okay? Changes have already taken place. What a beautiful place. What is happening as we change the political climate from that of the nomadic system over to communism, to capitalism? What'll come next? What are we in the middle of now? How can the Mongolians take care of their country? They will decide, and they will do important things, but we can guide them in some ways. What a beautiful place to work with all of these streams and clouds and sky and people. Oh, the people. They will do so much for you. Some of the impacts that are especially nasty on the streams of Mongolia are coal mining, okay? There's a huge amount of energy that is needed to support this. There are good people in this audience that are working towards making coal work better and to go to other fuels and other resources for energy that might do a better job than eating whole hillsides or whole hillsides for gold. What do we need gold for anyway? Well, we need it to make computer chips, okay? All the other incidental uses are perhaps not as important. My stoneflies and the other aquatic insects can tell us whether these places are impacted. If we tell the companies that do this kind of work what was in the stream before they got there, Mongolian law now reads that they have to restore those lands to get those bugs back in those streams, okay? That's one of the prices we have to pay for the wonderful lifestyle that we have. We have to pay full price for things, and maybe someday we will. There are impacts in downtown. Let's go back to that picture. I didn't want it to advance. This is downtown Ulaanbaatar. Here's a 700-year-old Buddhist monastery on the one side and a brand new skyscraper being built. Has anybody lived in UB? What's the name of that building in the colloquial, in the common speech? It's a big, blue, wonderful building just across from party headquarters and Chinggis Khan Plaza, okay? All the Mongolians would tell me that building is called the Pregnant Woman. Anybody hear that? Anybody else? I just had, oh, you did, okay. You've heard of pregnant women before. I have seen the world from different angles. This was a watershed, if you will, moment for me. I got in a little stream, happens to be in Texas, and I looked at that stream. Instead of looking down in it and what its resources were, I looked up out and saw this shimmering funnel as the reflection above me. Take a look at the world from different points of view. Who or what do you love? Where is the middle of nowhere? Is it Wendover? Might be. Is it waterfalls from underneath? Is it people from the inside out? I hope that I will show you the center of everywhere. I've explored some of these angles through my research and through my travels, but the center of the universe for me is this woman. I've had to be away from this woman for 5 months, a month at a time, for 5 years, and I'll probably do it again. But that's a high price to pay. I love her, and I want her to know that I do. This is from this past weekend. This woman is another woman that came into my life for just a brief period of time. She was somewhere between 65 and 900 years old. She rode up on her horse and started talking to Handa here, and I decided that I'd show her what we were doing. If you want to take the time, I showed her this box of insects. It was this very box right here. There's one other box here. And as soon as I showed it to her, she looked at it and squinted. She is 65 years old with no glasses. And then immediately she reached into her dell, her big coat there with the belt on it, and pulled out her telescope. And maybe all of you don't know this, but this woman did. If you look through one end of a telescope, it magnifies things in the distance. If you turn it in and turn it around, it serves as a magnifying glass for things up close. This woman knew that perspective. My knee was hurting bad when I took this picture. Okay? I had my own perspective of what was going on. Honda was helping her, and she looked at those, Honda was translating for me, and she said, oh yes, there's that blue one. We see that it lives on this kind of Sagan, what do they call it? Saganburgas is what white bushes. And she knew about the countryside. She knew so much, and it was wonderful. She took a look at things and enjoyed looking at those bugs. Oh, I wanted to see, look at that stirrup, that steel stirrup on her horse that she rode up on. This is 6 o'clock in the morning, okay? We had some empty jam bottles that she wanted to take home, so Honda helped her hike up her dell so it'd be a little bit more of a backpack, and threw all those bottles in there, cinched it all up, got her telescope put back in, and then at 65 to 80 years old, she swung up onto her own horse and rode off into the distance. One more woman that has left my life. Oh, that I can be, at 80 years old, able to swing my leg over a horse and ride off out onto the steppe. Bachla, thank you.
Some may have to go to class, so we want to take a minute or two for a couple of questions.
There are these things, if you want to look at them, that I brought some things that I've picked up along the way. Question?
Pond of insects that suck blood. This looks like it ought to be a wonderful place for mosquitoes and black flies and
There were
cuticoides.
so many mosquitoes, so many black flies. If I run my hands along my temples, or whatever we call this, I can feel Mongolia still, okay? I have been bitten by so many different kinds and so many at one time, mosquito or black fly, that it's incredible. No-see-ums. If you like sucking blood insects, Mongolia is important. But you notice, despite not liking that so much, it didn't form any of my opinions about whether I will go back to Mongolia. I lose 10 pounds each time I go.
So you mentioned that you go and you study the rivers, and how deteriorated has that become? I mean, is it a real issue, or is the water quality a lot worse than it used to be, and is it improving?
Since communism left, when the Soviets left, water quality has gone down, okay? Market forces, capitalism, have made it so that some countries, some companies went in and exploited very quickly to get resources out, and quality went down. So there was a bump where it went down, and now we're at a stable point. But we're at a stable point with a not-so-sleeping giant to the south that wants every resource, and has for about 4,000 years, that Mongolia has, okay? So now we have it in place where, using what we'll call modern techniques, we know what the baselines are, we know at least what it was in about the year 2000. I am so proud of what the Mongolians have been able to do. They are holding their own.